On Indianapolis This Week, City Showdown, a Sunday morning exclusive. Mayor Ballard sits down with us, responding to the council's shooting down the Criminal Justice Center and voting to sue over the city's electric vehicle fleet. Plus, he ran Indiana's Republican Party. Now he's running to replace Senator Dan Coates. We go one-on-one with Eric Holcomb.
RTV6, the Indy Channel. This is Indianapolis This Week with Rafael Sanchez.
Thank you for joining us today. You can also join us right now on social media. Just look for our Twitter account at Indy This Week. We begin, though, this Sunday morning with an exclusive with Mayor Greg Ballard. Huge setbacks this week for two of the administration's big projects. The City County Council voting 23-6 to sue city leaders, hoping to void the $32 million contract with Vision Fleet. Several of the councilors calling it illegal. One Democrat council member even comparing it to money laundering. The council also refusing to consider a scaled-down version of the new Criminal Justice Center, essentially leaving that plan dead for now, likely leaving it to the next mayor and the council to decide. Mr. Mayor, thank you for joining us. On the issue of the electric cars, Freedom Fleet has asked for a judicial review after the City County Council planned to sue over the contract. Will that judicial review come out that it is a good contract, that it is legal?
Well, I think so, but you know, there's a much bigger picture on this, and I assume you're going to give me time to discuss this.
I will,
but yes, I think so, yeah. Because the parties to the contract are fine with it.
So the contract will stand?
I expect the contract to stand. You never really know, but the parties to the contract are fine, and in contract law, if those two are fine, it's usually okay.
You all have been annoyed at this process because both now, not only the Democrats, I think you expected the Democrats to give you pushback, but your own Republicans have been part of this derailment.
Well, no, actually, I did not expect them to give me pushback, and I'll tell you why. Because, you know, according to Unigov, the mayor runs the administrative portion of the city, and we run the departments, right? I mean, it says it right in there. The fleet is obviously a part of that. So when I ordered the Camry hybrids in 2008, nobody questioned that. When we buy a fire truck, nobody questions that. Mayors have been doing that for 40-plus years, and that's just what happens. They run the fleet. So here's another fleet decision to be made that is working and saving the city money, and now they're saying, no, we have to look at this. Well, but it's the same thing, right? We're just buying cars, or in this case, leasing cars, and getting the services on the maintenance, and that's what we do. That's what the Unigov says the mayor does. So, in this particular case, we made the announcement in 2012. This is 2015. We made the announcement in 2012 that we're going to convert the fleet. Hardly a secret. We did it at a gypsy meeting. All the cameras were there. It was a big deal. So we get to a certain point where we get the contract done. All right. So before that, even as we're moving up on this, the council is funding the budget for this. So we announce it. The council approves budgets for this. Same council, which is kind of saying, okay. Then when we announced the contract, we hold a huge press conference. All of the media was there almost a year ago. Everybody knows what is happening. Everybody knows the arrangements. The contract's there. This is a year ago. Nobody had any questions about it. Everybody said, okay, this is the direction we're going. Everybody was okay.
So are they hypocrites then?
Well, wait a minute.
Okay.
So we announced it in 12. The council funds it throughout. We hold the press conference saying the contract is done. We showed the cars. We brought in a former commandant of the Marine Corps from D.C. to talk about national security. So everybody's okay with it. And then 5 months before the election, they do this.
So are they hypocrites?
I think they're politicians who are trying to get this to help them get elected.
Your office called it irresponsible and misguided. Do you stand by that?
Yeah, I think it is. Because they've approved it.
I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is it irresponsible and misguided?
They've approved it all the way. This is no secret. This has been no secret whatsoever. And everybody knows what has happened with this. So, and now just a few months before the election, here we go. Really?
Will the program stand?
I expect the program to stand because the parties to the contract agreed with the contract, and it's a good program. It's working. People like the cars. It's working.
Back in December, you mentioned to me in an interview that we did that your priority in your last year would be the Criminal Justice Center.
That pre-K.
And pre-K as well. You're correct. Is there any way to salvage the issue, this deal with the Criminal Justice Center, or is it done? Is it over?
Well, there was a time frame associated with it because of the financing portion, and because the cost of money changes, and WMB went so far and gave us that particular time frame. In fact, if the council had approved it in January, February, we would have saved another $1 million or $2 million a year if they had approved it in May or June, right? So, I mean, that's the cost of money. That's what happens. All that said, if they approved it in May or June, it still would have been within the framework of the agreement. But that time has now passed, and so if they do put it back together again, there's going to have to be some sort of modification to the agreement. All that said, WMB was a terrific partner in all of this, and they stood by it all the way, and they put together a great package that we have needed for 30 years. 30 years, and we were the only ones to have the gumption to actually put a proposal forward.
The overruns in the millions if we wait? Is this going to be the tens of millions?
No, I think it's going to be more than tens of millions.
Tens of millions.
Because everybody knows the condition of the jail. We know we have, is it 34, 38 courts, I can't remember, in a space designed for 16 courts. The transportation of the prisoners is unsafe. It's completely inefficient. The buildings are falling down. And here was a solution that nobody had put together for 30 years, even though everybody knew we needed it. We put that solution together, and now here we are. So it's going to take, the land will probably be gone. That particular piece of land probably will not be available. We will own some of the intellectual property. We will keep, as I think we've been extremely transparent on this. WMB has been very good about this, and we'll keep, the portion of it up on the website, up on the portal, so everybody can see it, so that if they do get to it in the next year or two, maybe they can salvage some of it, but it's still going to cost a lot more money because clearly the cost of money is going to go up, and frankly, people are going to add more. They're going to add more risk to the city because we've kind of proven to be not such a great partner in this, because the council twice said we need this. We agree with this process that's moving forward. Twice they did that. And then at the end, they pulled the rug out. I
spoke to Chief Rick Hite, Metro Police Officer, Metro Police Chief Hite, and he's very proud of the lowering crime numbers that are going down. You're pushing a new effort called the 360 Coalition, very much about being data-driven to get to the root of crime. Will that work?
Well, this is a 20 to 30-year plan. This is not a 2-month plan or a 5-month plan, and we've taken it and put it in the nonprofit organizations, the people who are doing the good work. We do have to address root causes. There's nobody doing this in the country. There's people doing different things, but nobody's looking at it as holistically as us. So if this works well, we know that 0 to 3 is an absolutely critical time frame for youngsters, where the brain forms, personality forms, attitudes form. And if we can help those at-risk families with those infants, maybe we're in that 14 to 24 group where Black Expo is doing the intervening. They will not have as many 10, 15 years out.
It seems that collaboration is the key to this.
It is absolute collaboration and talking to each other, because they all do great work. But we're going to look at these at-risk families and at-risk kids through a life cycle. I don't want to say that we're going to take care of them all. That's not the point. The point is to intervene at the appropriate moment to make sure that wherever they start to fall off the path, or we want to make sure they don't fall off the path, that's the intent. And like I say, no one's ever done this before. All these organizations we've talked to for months on end now, and they're all ready to step up and do it.
The Mayor of Indianapolis, Greg Ballard, thank you so much for joining us on the program and for covering all those subjects.
Thank you.
Come back again.
Thank you. I will. Thank you.
Up next, we bring in our political insiders to weigh in on the fight over Vision Fleet. That's next on Indianapolis This Week. Welcome back to Indianapolis This Week as we bring in our insiders, Mary Beth Schneider, Adam Kirsch, and Pete Seat. Let's jump right into this issue of the city and the mayor. You had a great comparison.
Yeah, it kind of reminds of the State Board of Education, the group that just cannot get along. Poster child for dysfunction, and now we have city, county council, and mayor not being able to get along. And worse, I suppose, for the mayor, the council voting to take him to court. They're suing. Even Republicans voted to sue the mayor. This cannot be good news for anybody, I don't think.
Well, it's certainly not good news for Greg Ballard. I mean, Greg Ballard has tried to go out front and say we need electric cars. Called him earlier today a lease or a purchase, which has to go through city bidding practices, and it didn't, which is what this lawsuit's about.
Electric cars might be a good idea, but the method, the contract itself is the problem.
In concept, everybody supports electric cars, but you have to follow the laws of Indiana.
And I think you would expect Democrats to sort of criticize him, but when his own Republicans are also voting against him, Pete Seed, I mean, what does that say?
Well, sure, Democrats are trying to kick him on his way out.
Sure.
He's doing some legacy items.
But that's no surprise, right? You would expect Democrats to be...
Unfortunately, in politics, that's what we've come to expect.
What about the Republicans, though, who are doing the same thing?
People are on both sides of this issue. They're upset for different reasons. As you mentioned, it will go before a 5-judge panel to determine whether this contract was right or wrong. You can't dispute the fact, though, that the council did agree to this in 2014, and we're already saving money. It's working. So we're at this point, I think, because the Democrats want to play politics in an election year to set the stage for their preferred candidate in November.
But it's hard to buy that when Republicans voted with the Democrats. It seems like there's more than simply politics going on. Now, maybe it's other divisions and other factions, but it's not just partisan politics.
Well, absolutely. And there's another problem in addition to the bidding. We found out last week that the mayor has raided the stormwater fund to pay for this contract. Now, they've said they've repaid it, and that's okay, but we need to know how many other times they've raided the stormwater fund. I can't imagine they just did it once and came up with it.
Which the mayor has owned up to and said wasn't done in the proper way that it should have been done, and he's admitted that, which is why he's been such a successful leader. Is unlike some people in this political game who won't admit mistakes, he admitted it and owned up to it.
Mayor Beth, this is an issue of being a lame duck mayor. I mean, this is the mayor who says, look, I'm not coming back, so the council's now sort of saying, we'll do whatever we want.
If it was, again, if it was only partisan politics, I'd say yes. And I think there's always some issue when you're in your last term and everybody's kind of moving on. They know you aren't going to be there, and they will want to put things off and see who the next mayor is going to be. But at the same time, I think it's the sort of thing that when people first backed Mayor Ballard, they didn't think they'd see. They thought he was going to come in and be the Marine who knew how to make everything run on time. And I think that is actually hurting his legacy somewhat in these final days.
Another big issue is the Criminal Justice Center. He just said to us just moments ago that the property may not be available and that this may cost all of us in Marion County tens of millions of dollars in the future. Are those figures correct? And is that true? Do you think it'll cost us this much?
I don't actually know the studies he's citing on the tens of millions of dollars in the future. Everybody agrees we need to get a new criminal justice facility of some sort, whether that's a new jail and court, whether that's just a new jail, whether that's a new everything. Everybody has agreed on the concept. It's all been funding based. This last-ditch effort that they did this week was never vetted, never stood a chance, and I'm glad Democrats stood up.
Do you think it was the whole issue of the Fergusons and those other things that we saw around the country where people were saying, let's not spend so much money on jail space and let's spend it more on prevention programs? Was that part of the dynamic of this that made this a project so toxic?
Well, the Democrats in the council haven't come up with ideas. They've tried in recent weeks and months to prevent this project from going forward after supporting it in the past. They have saddled us with millions in development costs. They have killed 2,000 construction jobs because this project is not moving forward, and they're not putting ideas forward. If they have ideas for how to do this, we all agree it should be done, then put some ideas forward and don't just wait for the election to do that.
This one, though, might be kind of a lame duck issue, don't you think? Because I think there is a sense on a project this big that is not even it won't start until after the next mayor gets in, no matter what happens now. Maybe you do want to wait for the next mayor to have some input and skin in this game.
And you get the last word on that. If you want to join the conversation as well, go to Twitter and follow Adam. That's okay. Mary Beth, Pete, Lara, and Abdul, and tell them what you think. They're ready to hear all your comments. You can also follow our new Twitter account at Indy This Week and stay up to date on politics 24/7. Indianapolis This Week continues right after this. We talked about the race for the U.S. Senate. Can the man who ran the Indiana Republican Party win the race to succeed Dan Coates? Eric Holcomb joins us next on Indianapolis This Week. Welcome back to Indianapolis This Week. We now turn our attention to the race for U.S. Senate. This week, Congressman Todd Rokita announcing that he will not seek the Republican nomination, instead staying in the U.S. House. And as we reported on our Twitter account this week, a source confirms to us that Congressman Todd Young will likely make his announcement after July the 1st. But right now, let's talk about one candidate who is in the race. We turn now to our new Indianapolis This Week correspondent, Jason Fechner.
We welcome in now Eric Holcomb, Republican candidate for Senate. He most recently served as the state chief of staff for Senator Dan Coats, the man he's now hoping to replace. He's also a former Indiana Republican Party chairman. Mr. Holcomb, thanks so much for spending time with us.
Good to be here,
Indianapolis this week. Good to have you here. I'm going to ask you a quick, short question, which in the world of TV news is a rarity. Why run?
Yes, well, as you mentioned, I formerly worked for Senator Dan Coats, and when he decided not to seek re-election, I immediately took a leave of absence to think about running myself, because I was so up close to all the issues that face our nation. Obviously, at this point in our country, there are a lot of people that are pretty anxious about the future. The great American philosopher Yogi Berra said the future ain't what it used to be. How true that is. People are just almost on edge about issues relating to our national security, issues relating to our economic prosperity and security, and issues relating to the, I say, gross overreach of the federal government into our daily lives. So I've been out on the campaign trail barnstorming the state of Indiana 24/7, nonstop, perpetual motion, meeting with people, hearing directly from them about their feelings on all these three fronts: a safer America, a stronger America, and a freer America.
You've been an outspoken supporter, of course, of Senator Coats, and you had mentioned that about 10 years ago the state was adrift.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we were listlessly adrift, wandering out in the wilderness with no real direction. We were sinking, I believe, in debt. We were looking at plans decade after decade after decade, but they were never coming to fruition. And it took leadership from former Governor Mitch Daniels, who I served with and worked closely with for 8 years while he was in office. And so we said, how are we going to build a better state? And it took canvassing the state of Indiana. It took the very same approach of reaching out to folks of like and different minds about the issues and trying to build consensus and say, let's not just talk about the problems, let's not admire them, let's put together a list of solutions and figure out how we can move the state forward. And lo and behold, we took an $800 million hole, and we filled it and converted that into about a $2 billion rainy day fund. We said we've been talking about building I-69 since going back to the Korean conflict, 50 years. How are we going to build this? We need some new thinking, we need some new approaches, and we need to bring people who always don't agree with one another together at the same table. You don't have to kick someone off the table. You can say, just make room for your neighbor. And we figured out a creative way, led by Governor Daniels, and brought people together, and we said, now let's start building these roads with a $3.85 billion of other people's money, put it on the table and said, let's get to work. And it goes on and on and on, the list of accomplishments that we were able to do because of that approach. So we established a AAA credit rating, we established a rainy day fund, we established roads that were just talked about for decades, and we established a state that is almost second to none. We went from last to leader in terms of a place where people want to bring their business and grow their business. And that was just due to that hard work, bringing people together, and that's exactly the kind of advocate I want to be for Indiana in our nation's capital.
This is the first campaign where your name is on the yard signs out there. How do you form that?
First statewide campaign, you form it by doing the hard work. Fortunately for me, being associated with leaders like Senator Coats and like Governor Daniels, who have run statewide operations and have been in touch with all these, every county that I go to, I'm not going to for the first time. So I don't only know where the county courthouse is in all 92 counties. I usually know where the barbershop is on the square. So I am not just introducing myself as I get around the state, but I'm reconnecting with folks. And it's been, I've been very pleased with the response that I'm getting from the layered levels of leadership that is stepping forward. The volunteers that are so near and dear and are so important to the election results. Those folks are stepping forward and joining us, and mayors and state representatives, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Party leaders all around the state are stepping up and saying, how can we help? That's pretty encouraging, and that's what it takes to build an organization that continues to grow.
We've got a few seconds left. Do you believe that Washington's broken? How can it be fixed, if so?
I don't believe it's broken. I know it's broken. There has been a lot of admiring problems. And what I think it's going to take is people that go there that aren't just concerned about the title, aren't just concerned about a next election, but are actually concerned about making a difference. And what that takes, I believe, is what I'm doing right now, is going around to all of the 92 counties and saying, what are some Hoosier, homegrown, common sense solutions, and organize those things, list those things out, and take those to Washington. So we have an economic prosperity program that we can say, these are the 15 things we need to do, but we're going to have to make some big, bold decisions, or those decisions will be made for us. And the medicine may not taste real good right now, but it will taste worse the longer we continue to kick the can down. So I'm prepared to make those decisions if Hoosier send me to Washington.
Senate candidate Eric Holcomb, thanks so much for spending time with us on Indianapolis This Week. Rafael, we'll send it back to you.
Jason, thank you. Also running for the U.S. Senate race, Marlin Stutzman, the congressman from Northern Indiana, and former Democratic Congressman Barron Hill. We'll be right back after this. A final note from Indianapolis this week on the race for governor. Mike Pence will formally launch his re-election bid this week, part of the Indiana State Republican Party dinner on Thursday. We'll have full coverage for you right here on RTV6. Thank you for joining us for Indianapolis this week. Have a great Sunday. We'll see you next week.